In all of the episodes that I create and the videos that I make, there's always this need within me to want to, or a wish within me, to want to talk about the shift that's possible for us when we're having difficulties being an HSP and trying to fit in and struggling with our career and our business, into recognizing that there's a really important reason as to why we see things differently and why we are fundamentally different people, and what that really means as a role in our lives, and how we can make that shift into really understanding our value and the wonderful effect that that truly has on our well-being and our place in the world, and the difference that we can really start to make as a result of that. Let's dive in.
Inluminance specializes in developing sensory processing sensitivity, a natural high sensory intelligence present in 30% of the population, co-creating with the power of humanity to consciously evolve towards balance.
It's really interesting when we think about what natural self-expression really means for us and what that means for each of us individually. And self-expression it's such an interesting area wherein if we're really used to not expressing our true self, and that of course is a huge area unto itself, but if we're not really in the freedom to express ourselves in the way that we want to, then we're actually inhibiting a great deal about our personality, our character, and also really our interests and our fascination, and how we really want to kind of explore and get into things. And by following that path and following, what feels really interesting to us, and noticing how we're naturally designed to notice subtleties in things that really fascinate us, and how our path of curiosity really begins to guide us into an arena of life that really matters to us, that's really linked to self-expression. It's really linked to that, to that kind of natural flow and that natural part of us that really wants to come through and to do the things that we really want to do. And, unfortunately, society, in the way that we're conditioned, it's difficult to do that. And that's across the board for everybody. The trouble with HSPs, for us as HSPs, the trouble that we experience is if we're not allowing ourselves to maintain that curiosity and to encourage that curiosity and to explore what those subtleties are, and to actually notice that we have a very important skill set that really is trying to come forward through us. So what I'm about to lead into is really about the importance of recognizing our natural abilities and our gifts. But if you were to think of a scenario where if we were born into a tribe, let's say, and for some reason we were the first and only ever HSP that had been born into a tribe, so we didn't get the training and the kind of the support from local families and community members, and we had to figure it out for ourselves, but there was only one of us HSP in that tribe. What we would eventually realize is if, say, the people around us were really encouraging and really, loving and wanted us to really understand the true nature of who we are, and there was a lot of encouragement to do that, we would feel this amazing freedom, first of all, and then secondly, we would get really interested in, okay, well, actually, for me to find my place in this tribe, then I'm going to explore what interests me, explore what fascinates me. And eventually what would happen is we would find this area of tribal life that really intrigued us and interested us and was exciting for us. And then we would begin to open up the access to our high sensory intelligence which is our ability to be able to see and notice a broader range of sensory input that allows us to fulfill particular tasks in that arena of interest. So what would happen is gradually we would come into the ownership and belonging of this natural gift and ability within us and realize that that serves a very important role within the tribal community. So maybe it is that we realize we're very good at healing. Perhaps we're very good at healing the body, but also we're very good at working through blocks and difficulties and our, and realizing that we are here to heal the tribal members in a way that no one else can do because of our ability to be able to see a much broader range of information about the people in that tribe, in our tribe. And then we would understand our place, and then we would also come to realize that these natural gifts and abilities are part of nature's flow. It's part of this greater context that we live in, part of that, that beautiful relationship that we have as HSPs with something that's greater than us, that's guiding us, and that is trying to work through us. And what an amazing revelation that would be, and for that to be celebrated within our community, to say, yes, well done, that's exactly who you are, and there's such value in how you see things, and none of us can do what you can do in what you're seeing and experiencing, and you're helping the tribe enormously, and can you help and train other people to do the same thing? That would be such an incredible breakthrough, and that's exactly what's missing, and it's also our responsibility to actually figure that out for ourselves. Now, for many of you listening, you might think, well, I've got to get up to work tomorrow and I've got to do like a 9-hour day or even longer, and I'm fully involved in this, and how on earth do I make a shift into healing the tribe? And I completely understand. However, my invitation is to begin to do that anyway. So to begin to become curious of the environment and the circumstances around you. I know what it's like. It's difficult, going to work, the same people, like the people know who we're supposed to be. We have roles to fulfill, and we're very much stuck. We're very much contained in expectations of ourselves. And it doesn't necessarily mean that we have to make big shifts in our behavior, but we can start to make shifts in our observation and our awareness. So as an HSP, as a neurodivergent person, and wherever you are on that scale, you are having a sensory experience that's designed to be different. You're designed to see things in a different way. So you can allow yourself to start to value that and start to notice that. To start to notice what you're seeing about people. What are you feeling about how people are responding to things? What are you noticing around what's real and what isn't real? This is one of the greatest gifts that we have, and one of the most frustrating parts of ourselves that we experience when we're not in ownership of our ability to understand what's real and what isn't real. And the reason I'm just going to talk a little bit about this real piece is because I didn't trust that in me at all for many, many years. And it was through the facilitation that I went through and through my own training as an HSP, which is important to have these types of conversations, to recognize the importance and the value of what we're doing. But our ability to be able to actually feel and experience what's real versus what isn't real is a fundamental part of our ability. And what's real and what isn't real is an interesting conversation. I was actually talking to a dear friend last night, and we were talking about the concept of truth. And I'm always harping on about the HSP ability to be able to feel the resonance of truth. And my friend was saying, yeah, but truth to me is, I associate that with religion. And that was a really important piece of information for me, because I completely get that. You know, the word truth means different things for all of us, in the same way that God means the word God means different things to all of us, of course. And interesting how truth and God are very linked. Truth is not what I mean. I certainly don't mean a religious, a religious scripture in any way that says we must live and we must do this and this is the truth of who you must be and what you must do. That's not what I mean. What I mean is to notice when you're at work, or when you're going about your day, when you're talking to someone, when you're having conversations, is to allow yourself to start to recognize that you have the ability to feel what's going on in front of you at an energetic level. And what I mean by that is all human beings are experiencing a very powerful flow of electrical energy that's happening within the movement of energy, which is emotion comes from energy in motion. We are an electrical being. There is a lot happening within us at an energetic level. If you think about that in terms of electricity, what's happening in our brains, what's happening in our central nervous system, and what's happening in our emotions, there is a lot going on in a human being that is very powerful in terms of that flow and in terms of that energetic flow of information that's happening. I didn't allow myself to acknowledge that I could feel that going on in other people. And let me just reassure you that having now trained 350 HSPs over the years that I have done, I've sat in front of people all of that time and been able not only to be able to feel what's happening within them, but to help them to understand that for them to be able to reveal for themselves that they also have this ability to be able to feel that resonance, which makes sense. Because if you think about what makes us an HSP, we're processing sensory information at a deeper level. So sensory information involves the ability to feel. We have higher levels of high levels of empathy. So it makes sense that we can actually sit in front of something that is beaming all sorts of electrical energy and movement and energetic flow. It makes sense that we can feel that. It's not too far out of our understanding to see how that would be. That's also, of course, coupled with micro-expressions and tone of voice and how we're actually able to, really assess what's happening within a person in front of us. And through all those years of facilitating and encouraging HSPs to really explore that ability, they are consistently revealing the ability to be able to feel to that degree. So now perhaps you're listening to that and thinking, yeah, I can see how that kind of makes sense, but. And that's good to question things. It's much better that you go and try out the things that I'm talking about rather than just listening it, thinking, oh yeah, that sounds like it's probably the case. What's much better is that when you are at work or when you are around the people that are around you, whatever circumstance that it is actually to allow yourself to ground and to come into your body and allow your awareness to take up some room wherever you're sitting and come into a sense of personal self-expression. Not to say that you're now going to express yourself. Well, of course, you may well do if that's appropriate. But what I'm talking about is actually just to be in yourself, to be in the engagement of you, and to notice what you feel from that place. I don't mean to do this from a place of the mind madness, of processing and thinking and justifying and worrying. I'm talking about coming into your body and coming into an experience of a grounded state of engagement with yourself, to notice what you actually feel and what you actually see. And you will begin to understand what I mean by what is real and what isn't real. So if you're sitting in a group of people that are having a meeting at work, and people are speaking, they're coming up, and someone comes forward and they start to speak, they start to go into a monologue. I can promise you, if you're grounded and you're focused and you're present, and you're focused, that's key, you will be able to sense whether that person is coming from a place of veracity, coming from a place of alignment within themselves. What are they actually contributing to the meeting? You can feel the difference between what is true, I know that's that word again, you can feel what is real and what isn't real. And if you allow your awareness to really explore what's happening, you will be able to sense whether the conversation that's happening is actually really in alignment with the outcome that's trying to be achieved, or whether it's being disrupted by people's fears, personal agendas. You will be able to notice the difference between those things. Now, the key here is that your fascination, so when we go back to that tribal experience of being encouraged to explore, tell me what's interesting you, what do you notice? Let's figure out what nature's given you. What's the area of fascination that nature's given you to work in? Where's your area of competence? We have to do the same thing in our lives. So facilitating groups may well be your area of expertise, and you may be sitting there in the meetings at work thinking, this is driving me crazy. There is a much better way to do this. And that is your high sensory intelligence coming forwards, encouraging you to do things differently and to communicate how things can be done differently. Coming from a place of peace and balance. It doesn't work for us when we come from a place of protest and fear as HSPs. That's when we get shut down. We have to come from a place that is loving and understanding and compassionate without that sounding patronizing in any way. And we have to be able to use language that makes sense. That's an area that we must practice. But understanding what your natural area of competence is, which comes through understanding what your fascination is, will help you to recognize that you have an ability to see what's real and what isn't real in that area of expertise. And you'll have to take my word for this. Until you allow yourself to experience this and notice this for yourself. Once we understand that there is an area that we're naturally gifted at and we're really good at feeling what's real. So for instance, let's say a friend comes to you and they are worried about their relationship that's happening. And they said, I fell out with my partner last night, this happened, that happened, this happened, that happened. I can assure you that if your area of interest is in relationships and it is in the area of specializing within relationships, I can assure you 100% that you will be able to tell if your friend was having a bad day and they're processing something that had happened last month, they're thinking about it, they were tired, and they picked a fight with their partner, and they're coming for you for justification to say, this happened, he said that happened, I was so upset, and essentially your friend is saying, don't you think I'm right? Can you help me? Can you please reassure me that I'm right and that my partner's wrong? You will absolutely be able to feel that your friend, as much as you love him or her, is not in balance, and they're processing something difficult, and they were tired, and they have overreacted, and they're running a false narrative that just isn't based in reality. You will be able to feel that. I promise you, you will be able to feel that. If you begin to trust that ability, it allows you to begin to facilitate effectively. You will be able to say to your friend, okay, so wind me back, tell me what happened at the beginning. And you take him or her through that. You allow her to process, you allow her to come in, to explain it, to talk about it, to explain it. And you will be able to facilitate the conversation to allow her to reach a point where you can help her to realize with love and compassion that she's actually processing something that she's projecting onto her partner, and that she actually needs to bring balance when she's ready and rectify the conflict that happened. And her partner is not in the wrong in this case. There may have been some areas perhaps, but the fundamental rift that you're sensing is something that your friend actually needs to face and take ownership of, take responsibility for, in order for this piece to be resolved. You can feel that. This is an invitation to trust that and to practice it and to become curious about this, to become curious about your ability to facilitate in this way. When we start to explore this is what gives us the opportunity as HSPs to claim the value of our perception, to understand that we have this natural ability, so we can start to come forwards. We can start to come forwards in our work life. We can start to come forwards in our personal lives. We can start to come forwards in the area that really fascinates and interests us, that nature's given us. More than anything, nature's saying, like, I've given you this incredible gift and awareness as an HSP. You have this ability to process more deeply in this area. Please go and help everybody just to discern what's real and what isn't real in that area, so you can help humanity to move forwards. It doesn't mean to say that that's happening at a global scale. I'm talking about taking responsibility for the ability that we have to bring our perspective forwards in order for us to help discern what's real and what isn't real in that area that we're fascinated by. When we make that shift, it is an incredibly rewarding experience. It is a shift into personal empowerment. We start to understand our abilities. We start to understand our place in the world. We start to come into our bodies and start to recognize the power of what's actually in our bodies. That the high sensory intelligent ability that we have to discern and read information resides in the intelligence of our bodies. It's not in the false identity that our mind's running. When we make that shift down, we start to get curious. We start to do the work that's required in order to come through the fears and the doubts and the conditioning that there's something wrong with us and there's something, that we're not, that we don't feel who we are, which is that self-expression piece again. When we start to make this shift, we come into ownership of our gift and ability. We come into ownership of who we are. Everything else starts to make sense around us. It's possible for you. I have done this. The people that I've trained have done this. And I want more than anything, my invitation for you more than anything is to try this out for yourself, to not be stuck in the narrative that there's something wrong with you, to not be stuck in the narrative that what you care about isn't valid, that your self-expression isn't valid. This is about us making the shift as HSPs to become aware of who we are, to become fascinated and interested and curious about who we are, and to come forwards into the world in the way that nature has intended for us. It's needed desperately right now to bring this balance, to bring the perspective of what's real and what isn't real, to trust that we have enormous value and great place in the world. So if this is resonating for you and you'd like more support around this, there's a link in the description below which has a link to a form. And in that form, you can start to tell us a little bit about what does interest you. There's some other pieces there that will allow you to begin to focus on and talk about or to explain in the form what these areas are. And the form's worded in a way that will help you to discern the area that's of most interest to you. And then we can start to help you. We can start to support you in making this shift into the truth of who you are, to the ownership of your gifts and abilities. And we can respond to you after you fill out this form, and we'll be able to guide you into the next steps that will help you to make this shift, that will be life-changing for you, and also life-changing for the people around you when you really come into ownership of the gifts and purpose of who you really are. Thank you for watching. Looking forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.